The Super League returns. Is this why the Glazers stuck around instead of selling to Qatar? Have they finally got what they wanted? What does this mean? Erik Ten Hag has been hung out to dry again. We're going to get into a bit of a rant about the Todibo situation. Another big target going to rival like Gakpo to Liverpool, Todibo to Spurs. We will then get into the latest takeover news surrounding Manchester United on Ashworth and more. We'll get into the transfer latest rumours that we're looking at Cubo, although not coming from very credible sources. Rumours of Varane going back to Madrid and more. And then we will talk a little bit about what Manchester United need to do. So please do hit that like button and of course subscribe down below if you're new. Please. Just realised that sounds really aggressive, but you know what I mean. Now, starting with the first story, and this came out about an hour ago, and I'm sure everyone has seen it all over social media, but the European Court of Justice have ruled that UEFA and FIFA acted against the competition of law when they blocked the formation of the Super League in 2021. So what does that mean? That means the Super League can legally go ahead. That means Real Madrid and Barcelona, who've been trying to make the Super League happen, will get loads of money if the Super League goes ahead and they can start their new format. Now, the Super League want to start their new format of like 60 teams, all based on competition, this and that. One that's going to cause less controversy. But at the end of the day, the fans didn't want the Super League. The fans called the Super League off because it's just money-hungry owners getting more money. And essentially, the Super League is a way because, let's be honest, the Premier League's so dominant that Real Madrid and Barcelona are going to financially catch us up, which is why they're so behind it. There's so many things that I don't like about the Super League. I like the fact that it's just much fairer in the Premier League. And to be honest, I think the Super League means there's a big chance for the Glazers to make a lot of money, which explains to me maybe why they've gone with Ratcliffe and stuck around, because they had a feeling that this was going to happen, that the Super League was going to happen again. And you know, we'll talk about this more in my live show tonight, but as I've said, I'm not a big fan of the Super League in the slightest. Continuing on, because I don't really want to rant about the Super League, I want to talk about that in my live show where I can really get involved with you. I want to read out a little bit more about the Super League where I know a bit more information. I just think that the Glazers are getting what they wanted, and I've never been a big fan of the Super League. But what I do want to rant about is sort of Ten Hag being hung out to dry in the January window and Todibo to, of course, Spurs. So Fabrizio Romano said that he understood Tottenham have open talks with Todibo. He's high on Tottenham's list, but it might not be an easy deal. But talks are starting now. Obviously, Spurs have communicated with Todibo, and Todibo is open to joining Spurs. He also remains on Manchester United's list. But it seems like there's going to be Gakpo last year, Todibo, Kim Min-jae, Taremi, Frimpong, Gravenberch, and Pavard. All loads of different players that Erik Ten Hag wanted, but he said he wasn't allowed in January because basically we had the inability to sell the likes of Maguire, McTominay, Donny, Martial because of our inability to sell. We ended up getting Johnny Evans instead, and while I've been happy with Johnny Evans, the fact that we missed out on Pavard, Kim Min-jae, who's been absolutely unbelievably immense for 40 million with his release clause, and Todibo is a bit of a shambles because Todibo is essentially Gakpo 2.0. Ten Hag wanted this guy in summer. Ten Hag needs the right centre-back. The guy he wanted in summer could be available again in January for £35 million, which is a very good price when you consider Antonio Silva and Diamond are double that. While they might be better, they are double that, and maybe we're going to have to go with the cheaper option because we also need a right winger, we also need a striker, we also need a 6/8 hybrid. It's like, why aren't we going for this? We're playing this whole we've got no money in January, or we're not going to do business in January because there's no good available deals in January. Well, Todibo is a good available deal in January because you wanted him in the summer. You didn't get him in the summer. You've gone into the season realising how much you needed that centre-back in the summer because Lindelof's not good enough and the rest of our centre-backs are injury-prone. And while Maguire's been good, he has his limitations. There's a really good opportunity here. For Todibo, this guy that you really wanted in the summer that you couldn't sign, is now available in January. You've been in a crisis where you're defending where you're conceding a lot of goals, you've had a lot of injuries, and there's the centre back you wanted in the summer available in January for still a great price. But you're going to go let your rivals take him, even though he plays for the club that Sergio Ratcliffe owns. I'm thinking we know that Ten Hag wants Todibo, but they're saying they won't do January deals unless it's someone like Werner on loan. And this is my big problem with Manchester United because John Murta says this: looking at the January window, we don't expect it to be particularly busy. There will always be opportunities, particularly in finding opportunities for players who aren't playing as much as they would like to. However, we've always been consistent in us saying that we do not consider January the best time to do business and that our recruitment strategy remains focused on the summer window. Murta again says the recruitment strategy remains focused on the summer window, but it's always crap in the summer window. We always have a crap summer window. We do. But he's saying, we don't consider January the best time to do deals, which is fine. It isn't the best time to do deals, but we do it completely wrong. There's an opportunity last January to get in someone like Gakpo, who was in Ten Hag's long-term plans, who has been hit and miss at Liverpool, but the point is he was who Ten Hag wanted. But then we went and got Weghorst and Sabitzer, who were not good enough. There's an opportunity now in January to get Todibo when we need a right centre-back, when we've had injuries at the back, stop him going to a rival who would be absolutely brilliant for Spurs. But instead, the deals we're looking at in January is Girassi, Werner and Marlin. And yes, we need an attacker, but I'm fed up with doing these short-term deals of players that aren't good enough in January. Why don't we actually get a player that is good enough in January that we'd be looking to get in the summer, but just get them in January because they're available in January? If Todibo is available in the summer, there's no doubt in my mind Man United will be looking to get him. So why don't we go look to get him in January? Now Fabrizio Romano did say that John Murta always says that Man United won't do anything in January and he believes they will. But when Fabrizio Romano says he believes United will do something in January, he says they're looking at centre-backs, but it's more Marlin, Werner, Girassi that they're actually looking at in terms of movement and doing something. But it's just a bit of a rant here because I think that Ten Hag is hung out to dry. I think that he really wanted Kim Min-jae, he didn't get him. He really wants centre-back, doesn't get him. It's like the amount of times that Ten Hag wanted Gravenberch, we couldn't sell, so we couldn't get Gravenberch. He wanted Gakpo, we couldn't get Gakpo, even though we sold Ronaldo and actually raised the funds for Gakpo. They just didn't want to spend the money. We actually had the funds for Gakpo that January. They didn't want to spend the money. And some will say we dodged the bullet, but that is my point. He'd still be better than Anthony. He'd still start for our team right now and probably be our best attacker. And we had the funds for Gakpo. We have the funds to do a 35 million deal for Todibo. And if we don't want to stretch that far, we can just try and sell someone and get like Martial out or get Lindelof out. There was offers for Lindelof last January of around £25 million from Inter. We have the ability to get Todibo. It's not like he's £80 million. We have the ability to get Todibo, like we have the ability to get January, but they won't do it because they don't want to spend money in January, because it all comes down to our greedy owners that don't want to spend money in January, just throwing Ten Hag under the bus. And then people will be like, yeah, but they spent this much money on Ten Hag and that much money on Ten Hag. Yeah, on a lot of his B and C options. They didn't get Frankie de Jong. They got a completely different player in Casemiro. And then in January, when we're not looking like we're going to get top four, when we're in a bit of a problem and we really needed some investment, particularly at the back, they're not looking at it. They're going to repeat what they've been doing over and over again and doing these 6-month striker deals that aren't good enough, that come to the club and aren't good enough. And you're like, well, why have you just brought this crap to the club? They do it repeatedly, and I think it's just getting a bit boring. And I do have a lot of sympathy for Ten Hag, which is why I'm a big fan of Dan Ashworth links, and I hope that he does leave Newcastle and come to United, because it is said that Man United will have to pay a significant amount to bring in Dan Ashworth. I think it's going to be very difficult to get Dan Ashworth because Newcastle's an enticing project. He's obviously going to get a lot more freedom support at Newcastle. However, if we pay a bit of money, if we push for him, maybe we can get Dan Ashworth. But this is why I want the likes of Dan Ashworth and Paul Mitchell. Not that they might be given the freedom to do stuff in January, but at least they won't do the silly deals in January and will be looking at long-term options and maybe would be going for a Todibo rather than a Werner in January. In terms of the takeover, it's expected to be announced in the new year, according to reports. If it's not announced tomorrow, it will be announced in the new year. But I do think this Super League ruling could be one of the reasons behind the delay on the Ratcliffe and Glazer sort of takeover announcement. I don't know. We'll talk more about it in my live stream tonight, but I do think the Super League, the money, the potential benefits could be one of the reasons for the delays, and also one of the main reasons the Glazers actually wanted a 25% stake rather than a full sale. In regards to transfers, there's actually a few stories going about that Kubo is being looked at by United at right wing, but it's coming from the Sun and not the most reliable sources, so I've not included that in today's video. They said that Ten Hag is expecting multiple departures from the first team window, and hopefully we do have multiple departures from the first team window to raise the funds to go and get someone like Todibo in January or Amadou Onana. I don't want Werners in January. I want a Marcus Leonardo. I want a Todibo. I want an Amadou Onana. I want a Nico Williams type signing. Players that are going to be part of the 5-year project, not players that are going to be here for 6 months to solve a problem. There was reports that because Alaba's injured, Real Madrid are going to get Rafael Varane, but a lot of credible sources say, well, Real Madrid want Rafael Varane, so Real Madrid are interested in Rafael Varane. A lot of reports say, well, Real Madrid are interested in Rafael Varane. There's no way United are selling in January. There's a lot of reports that United would be selling in January and that Varane would leave in January, but Varane's been playing the last 2 games. He's been playing well. A lot of credible sources are saying, no, Varane isn't going anywhere in January. Ten Hag doesn't want to let go of Varane in January, but I'm sure Real Madrid will push. And then there's a lot of people talking about Mason Greenwood at the moment having a good game for Atletico Madrid. And to be honest, right now, I wouldn't be surprised if United brought him back in the summer. We will talk about that more nearer the time because it's not relevant now, but I'm thinking we need a right wing, we need a striker. His PR image is getting a bit better the more he's playing, and I think United have put him on loan hoping his PR image changes. They see he's scoring goals, they see he can play right wing, they see he can play striker, they see he saves money. Although a lot of people aren't going to be happy with it and morally isn't the best decision, I wouldn't be shocked if he returns in terms of transfers. But what do United need to do, in my opinion? I've done a big rant about what we're not doing, which is letting the likes of Todibo likely go to Spurs, which isn't done yet. Maybe he goes to United. But we need a right centre-back like Todibo, Antonio Silva, and Diamonde. But Todibo is clearly the most affordable. We need the 6/8 hybrid DM that's physical, like Amadou Onana or Wifa. I think Amadou Onana would be my first choice, proven. We need a right winger that's direct, that can actually take people on, like Nico Williams, Bakayoko, and Soulé. And we need another option at striker, and I've gone with Marcus Leonardo. Maybe he won't be ready, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of Aguero in his young days. And then if the budget remains, I think those are the priority 4 positions we need to do. But I think if the budget remains, we look at Anasio and Branthwaite for maybe the left centre-back role. We look at Frimpong for right-back, and we potentially look at someone like João Neves, who's going to be a quality player, but I think he'll be at Benfica another year because he's so young. Anyway, thank you for watching today's video. Please do smash that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. See you next time. Bye.